Hello everyone, welcome to Out of Spec Reviews. I'm Max. If you haven't seen me on the channel before, I've been on a few times before, but I mainly run the Out of Spec Guide channel. Check that out if you're an EV newcomer and know someone who is. But anyhow, today I'm looking at the Polestar 2 model year 2024. Polestar, of course, being that performance brand, offshoot sort of a Volvo under Geely. Many of you are familiar with this. Kyle has his Polestar 1, of course, and the Polestar 2 has been a really compelling competitor to the Tesla Model 3 for a while. But Tesla's done price cuts, the Model 3 has an amazing value, and Polestar has to catch up. So they've refreshed the Polestar 2 for this model year, 24, with a facelift, and I'm here at the press event, which conveniently enough is in Colorado, to cover it. Also, I'll mention that I myself have a Polestar 2, in case you don't know. I drive the launch model year one that I bought used, and also with the performance pack like the one we're testing today. But I want to talk today about my thoughts as a current owner, what they've changed with this facelift, because it's more than a facelift. There's a lot of internal changes that are really interesting, especially for performance fans, and the new single motor that's rear-wheel drive. I'll talk about that. That's interesting. But I also want this video to be helpful to those of you looking at this segment of the market. Tesla Model 3, Hyundai Ioniq 6, this Polestar 2. What's the most compelling one? How does this stack up to them? We've got rough pricing info and specs and everything. It's launching imminently, so I'm going to tell you all about it, get some driving impressions as well, so stay tuned. Before we get into the rest of the video and it's me in front of the car showing off the exterior changes, driving it, giving you all those impressions, I want to go over the options you get on Polestar 2 for configuring it, specifically with this new one. So the new one comes in two basic drivetrain configurations. There's a rear-wheel drive model that's cheaper, and there is a long-range dual motor. The irony, though, however, is the rear-wheel drive single motor option is longer range. It's a bigger battery and it's more efficient. 320 miles of range on this one, as opposed to only 270 miles on the dual motor. Now, if you add the performance pack to the dual motor, that goes down even lower. That basically gives you the quickest 0 to 60, quickest specs, the most power, but you get only 247 miles of range. A lot of that comes down to the 20-inch wheels with summer performance tires. By the way, all-season tires are offered this year on the Polestar 2. Other big options to know about are just the packages that Polestar sells. So Pilot Pack, if you get any dual motor car, this is now standard, which I mentioned later in the video, but also the Plus Pack. Plus Pack is nice for those of you wanting the premium sound system, the Harman Kardon, the panoramic glass roof, crucially, which I think makes the car feel a lot less claustrophobic, and there's a few other goodies in there as well. But if you add the performance pack, you get Plus Pack automatically on dual motor. It's a little bit convoluted, but basically dual motor, they've tried to simplify the amount of options they have. They have a dual motor that's just the Pilot Pack, and they have a dual motor that has performance and plus. If you get single motor, you can't get performance because that's a dual motor exclusive option. It's just a single rear-wheel drive powertrain, though as you'll see later in this video, it's a good one. You have to add Pilot Pack and Plus Pack if you want those separately. And yeah, like I said, performance pack would bump you up to dual motor. You can, however, choose 20-inch wheels if you want. You can, however, add 20-inch all-season tires now on the single motor, which is a nice option if you want those for looks. I would stick with 19-inch, though, for range. But yeah, 320 miles EPA range on the single motor, that is a crucial spec. Anyhow, let's get into the rest of the video. All right, I'll do my best to quickly go over what's new before we get into interior and driving impressions and all of those. Let's cover what's new on the outside and some of the big EV spec upgrades for both the really exciting single motor update to Polestar 2 and its dual motor and performance variants. So we're looking at, for all new Polestar 2s in 2024, this new Smart Zone, which is basically an updated front-end design, body matching fascia. You can see here, the house is the radar unit for the adaptive driving features. That's nice. Pardon, there's a trash truck going by. Anyhow, new wheel design as well, if you get the performance trim. So that's gonna have new forged alloy wheels, slightly different. That's how you'll know you'll have the new one. These match the Polestar 3 design, or they complement it. They're much closer than the old forged alloy design from the previous performance pack. Then we get into, well, that's really honestly it for cosmetics. Charging, if you're curious, no NACS this time. That's coming hopefully soon. Polestar was early, however, to announce that they are going to support Tesla supercharging and give their customers an adapter for those. So that will be exciting, adapter to NACS. That, of course, will work on existing Polestar 2s as well. But
onto the new stuff. We'll start with the dual motor, which is less exciting, so you keep watching because the single motor I think is more exciting. But let me go over dual motor. Dual motor has the same battery pack, unfortunately, and the same charging. 155 kilowatt charging speed, peak 78 kilowatt hour net usable battery, which drives this car, however, to more range because it has a new motor setup. The dual motor, crucially, now has a disconnect for the front motor, and both the front and rear motor are new designs. So the rear motor is shared with the exciting new single motor variant of the other Polestar 2, but when they add the front motor, they're able to disconnect it on the fly the same way a lot of other EVs now do to basically have more efficient use of that same battery for more range. Numbers wise, we're looking at an increase in 20 to 30 miles of range. So from the previous trims, of course, you get the performance pack, it's less range, that's the same as the old Polestar 2. But if you don't get the performance pack, dual motor can now get you comfortably 270 miles of EPA rated range. That's nice, that's an upgrade, and I'm a big fan. Also, trim-wise, the 20-inch wheels are optionable with all-season tires. Super nice for those of you who live in climates where those make sense. However, you can still, of course, get the 20-inch performance summer rubber if you're getting the performance pack. Let's talk packages because I think that's important. Before I get the single motor, they're making the car a better value proposition. Starting price of this one's $55,000, and for $55,000, you're actually getting Pilot standard on dual motor, finally, meaning adaptive cruise control, lane centering, it's standard. It really should have been there the whole time. The Ioniq 6, of course, has highway driving assist. Tesla has basic autopilot with those features in all of their vehicles, but at least it's here. And if you get the performance trim, you get the added value of having Plus Pack included. All performance pack cars have the Plus Pack. So they're going to be more expensive, more like $60,000, but you get so much stuff for that, including the larger brake calipers, the gold seat belts, the Öhlins suspension. I highly recommend it if you're considering that, especially given that this new dual motor setup has more of a rear-wheel drive bias, which I'll get into the driving impressions. Compared to my Polestar 2, which is really symmetrical motors, this one has a stronger rear motor, and I am a big fan of that. But that's basically the dual motor story. Same charging, same battery, but they're getting more efficiency of it thanks to newer motors and a few value upgrades to the trim packages to basically make this car a better value. Then I'm gonna get into the single motor. And this is what I frankly think is way more exciting because it's rear-wheel drive only and it's efficient. 320 miles of EPA rated range. Believe it or not, the single motor variant has a bigger battery because it's a newer battery, same chemistry, just a new pack, 82 kilowatt hours net capacity. Of course, it has less power output. For performance fans, that dual motor one has a slightly faster 0 to 60, but very similar power numbers to last gen. It's 4.1 down from 4.3. This, however, will still do 0 to 60 in a respectable 5.9 seconds, which is very comparable to base Model 3. Not nearly as fast as a Model 3 long range, but it's fast enough for most people. And this isn't the performance trim. This is just the base one. Then you're getting into the value of the longer range, 320 miles of standard range. That turns this car from one that had, I think, poor range to one that's competitive with the base Ioniq 6 and the Tesla Model 3 LFP. It's importantly, I think, giving you faster charging speeds. So instead of the 155 kilowatt peak speed that you have, I'm stuck with in my Polestar and this new dual motor one still has, this one will go to 205 kilowatt peak charging speed. So it's basically going to charge quicker. And that's really nice. You combine that with a longer range, it's going to be really nice for road trips. Unfortunately, unlike dual motor, Pilot is not standard on this, so I really would recommend adding the Pilot pack because you combine the charging and the range. You want this to be a road tripper, you really want adaptive cruise control, I would just throw in the Pilot pack. And then Plus pack if you're feeling like it. Standard though, they have added a few nice things like a wireless charger, to all standard Polestar 2s to make it a little more competitive. But small updates here and there, really big updates on the inside with the motors on both models, and especially this new battery enabling that super great 320 miles of EPA range on this new model, as well as I think a respectable 0 to 60 time finally under 6 seconds. It's going to be fine for most people. If you're looking for performance, just get the dual motor one. You're getting Öhlins, Brembo calipers. It's worth it, honestly. It's a step up, but that's what you have as choices. So not the value that I think Tesla's lineup is, but it's a car with more content. And frankly, in my opinion, it's a car that I think is just built more solidly, has a more mature feel, but it's different. And I'll get into my interior impressions because I think the interior has some pros and cons compared to something like a Model 3 as well. But hopefully that was a good upgrade of what they've changed from the existing Polestar 2 and an overview for you EV nerds of what the specs are between the new, very intriguing rear-wheel drive based single motor one and the new updated tweaked dual motor Polestar 2. So we're inside the Polestar 2 and I am actually joined by my colleague. She works with Edmunds, Carrie.
Hi.
How you doing?
Good.
We're in the Polestar 2. It feels great. This one's so similar to mine. It's got the ventilated Napa leather seats. It's got the Plus Pilot and Performance packages. And what we're looking at here is, I think, just a little bit of a spicier car. It's got a rear-wheel drive bias. It feels great, but I think it's important for those of you less familiar with this car to get the grips with the interior. It's mostly unchanged. Really, actually, it's entirely unchanged. I think there's some new color options since the launch model year I've had. Mine has more of this blonde leather. This is like pure white. But Carrie, what do you think of this interior as a place to be?
I am a big fan of this interior. I think it is modern and clean, but it still is a nice compromise with physical buttons and, tactile resources aside from your singular screen. So I think it's a very nice compromise in that way.
Yeah.
I love the yellow seatbelts. And I also think that just overall, it just feels very clean and calming inside and very much upscale and premium for what it is.
Yeah, it definitely is that premium segment. It's not quite luxury, but it is premium. When you outfit it with these ventilated leather seats, it's nice. However, it is a bit, disappointing that they're leather and not vegan materials, not just for the, vegan aspect if you care about that, but the fact that a lot of synthetic materials we're seeing in Rivians and Teslas wear really well. They're super durable. They're super easy to clean in a way that leather, frankly, just isn't. And that speaks to a lot of this car's interior. It's carryover. There's some legacy stuff. You've got to remember, I don't think I mentioned this earlier in the video, but in case you didn't know, the Polestar 2 shares its platform with the Volvo XC40 and C40 Recharge and the XC40 gas car. So as a result, Carrie, we've got this center tunnel and there's batteries in there, but we also have the center console that I feel like is just imposing so much space that it doesn't need to take.
Yes, I was going to mention that is my singular beef with this car is I know that Polestar is a performance-based brand and they're going for a very tight cockpit type experience. But I tend to find this big clunky center console to be a pain in the butt.
I agree with you.
It's very big and claustrophobic.
Yeah, and they've improved some of the standard content. Like when you get performance, you're now getting that plus pack with the panoramic, glass sunroof and everything. Or sorry, panoramic roof. It's not a sunroof. It doesn't vent, unfortunately. But you get this nice feel. So yes, you're spending $70,000 to get all these options, but if you do, I do think you're getting so much more content from a driving and experiential perspective as opposed to a Model 3 long range or performance.
This car just has a more tangible soul than the other two, I feel like I get inside the Polestar and it feels, this is a very overused word, but it feels very crafted to me.
Yeah.
Whereas, you get into the, Hyundai or you get into the Tesla and it's just more of this high production value volume.
Yeah.
And this feels bespoke.
Yeah. I mean, I'm going to be honest, the Polestar 2 has never been a strong contender on paper, just in terms of specs and numbers compared to the competition, really Tesla. But you're saying it's the intangible aspect, the premiumness, the nice feel. If that speaks to you, this is your best option in town. Yes, there's the Volvo C40 Recharge, but this is a sports sedan. This is a little bit, somewhere in between an SUV and a sedan. It's in size, and I think the pricing wise, the tweaks they've made, including a little bit more content, giving you more range, even in this dual motor version, slightly more range, 30 miles, more range than last year. That's enough, I think, to at least keep it competitive on numbers.
Absolutely. And I feel like the updates that they've given with the new iteration of the 2 is worth it. I mean, it really shows you get the more range, you get the more power. I think they've made it worth it.
Yeah, they've definitely made it, I think, more worth it. I think it's just so hard, depending on who you are, to cross-shop this in some objective ways against Tesla. But like, again, I chose this over a Tesla. I bought a used appreciated one. But if you have the budget for this and you want that special experience, this does feel more like a BMW 3 Series, or let's, compare it to the BMW i4.
Yeah.
I've been in an i4 briefly, and I know people really love the way that car drives. I think with the rear-wheel drive bias now they've introduced, the newer motors, this hopefully will compare a little bit better to that. It's ever so slightly faster in 0 to 60, not quite as fast as the spicy M60, and not nowhere near as quick as a Model 3 performance, but yet I think it's going to be fine. This is not a drag race car. It's not even really a track day car because of how heavy it is. But it's a really nice, just like canyon carver in some ways. All right, GoPro overheated, apologies about that. But just to wrap up this segment here, basically, this is a car that's comfortable for, 2 people on road trips. My girlfriend and I have taken road trips in this. Carrie, you were mentioning like this would be perfect for like you and your husband, or, 4 passengers fine on a shorter trip, but longer trips, it's not the vehicle for that. That's really where you're going to want to look more in the SUV space, I think, for that. But size-wise, it is what it is. It's largely unchanged. I personally am partial to the fact that this is a hatchback, unlike the Model 3, or it's a liftback technically, but you can fold on the rear seats. It's all one compartment. That's super nice. I've used that for transporting large things before. So it's a surprisingly practical car in that sense. And it's just, yeah, it's nice. The dual motor one, this is like bordering on luxury, performance, premium, all these things are here. And I think it gives them really strong competition to the BMW i4, which I think is really overpriced in this market. It's still not giving value competition to Tesla or even the Hyundai Ioniq 6 in terms of like miles for range, but it's at least a lot better. And Carrie, I think the single motor one we're going to get in is going to have a lot more just in terms of that range and value category. All right, Carrie, we're back in the Polestar 2, but this one is the single motor long range. Honestly, seems like, long story short, this could be the one to get. It's got the bigger battery, 82 kilowatt hours, which means more range, 320 miles according to EPA, and I think that's compelling. Range isn't the biggest issue as an EV owner that I've had, but with the Polestar 2 dual motor performance I have, being like 200 miles realistic, not gonna lie, I could use a little more, and something like this would be nice. Not to mention this one's cheaper, $45,000 base price, but then the one we're in with options is more like 50 grand, but that's still a big delta. Hey, it's Max from the future. You join me with some things to discuss, some context, a few things I missed in the video. I added in text, but the price is wrong that I said, spoken out loud. Right, it's $50,000 base price, just under, for the single motor one. And yes, as we discussed in the video, that single motor one is nice. It's more efficient. The charging speed's faster. So that's cool for you road trippers. But if you're not a road tripper, if you don't see yourself taking long trips with the car, either spend more for the new dual motor, which has the rear biased hailing dynamics and everything else that Carrie and I really enjoyed. Of course, fully optioned, ventilated Napa seats. I mean, all under 65 grand. That's great. Great value case against cars like the BMW i4. A little bit more for sure than a Model 3 Performance, but a lot more car for what you're getting, in my opinion, and much nicer, I think, than Ioniq 6, especially as a performance car. But if you want to spend less and you don't care as much about range, consider what I did, getting this, getting not specifically this one, but a certified pre-owned Polestar 2. I got a fully loaded launch model year, so 2021 model, for $46,000. They're even cheaper now. Like, mine had everything, the ventilated leather seats plus pilot performance, and I added the 22 performance upgrades because this car got, in model year 22, performance upgrade, but you can just upgrade the 21 if you get a launch model year with a $1,200 software package. That bumps its power up to 350 kilowatts, which is like 480 horsepower. Nominally, that's actually more than the newest dual motor performance Polestar 2, but of course that one is faster, 0 to 64.1. I suspect that's because of basically better handling dynamics, the rear bias. It's able to basically more effectively control that, just more efficient, newer, better motors. Even though the power output is less, this one, being symmetrical front and rear motors, has a tendency to understeer. The newer one, I can say, I'm not Kyle, I'm not performance driving like crazy, but I will say does feel a little bit nicer to drive. I'm not sure if it's worth the price delta though, if you are price conscious. Remember, none of these cars, single motor or dual motor, are eligible for the federal EV tax credit, which is a shame, but state incentives may apply, so consider those as well.
For the price difference, I think this is fine. It would be nice to have something that was ventilated, but I think these seats are comfortable, and everything else is pretty much identical.
Yeah, if you don't mind, I'm going to pass this person now.
Yes, we're going to pass this truck.
And that brings me into the driving dynamics. But before I do that, yes, ventilation would be nice, or at least a more breathable material. If you live in a hot climate, I'm really going to recommend that you option a light color. I know it's really expensive. You need the Plus Pack, and then you have to spend a few grand more to get the ventilated leather seats. So going out there, I get is a lot, but maybe just do the option to do this material but in a lighter color, I feel like, just for those sunny climates, because this, especially if you didn't have the Plus Pack with the panoramic roof, can get claustrophobic. But the Pack would absolutely get us Pilot. Unfortunately, unlike the dual motor Polestar 2, which they have made Pilot standard on now, this does not have Pilot standard. So that means no adaptive cruise control, no lane centering as standard, and I think that's a little bit of a bummer. Unfortunately, one major area it's not competitive is the fact that it doesn't get the tax credit, because, right, $55,000 price cap on the federal tax credit for sedans. You'd think this could be eligible, but it's not, just because of how it's assembled, battery, and the vehicle being from China. It does not get the exception, does not get basically the $7,500 credit that the Model 3 does.
That is a bummer.
$7,500 potential. I know not everyone's eligible for it, but we always have to mention it. Ioniq 6 doesn't get it either, but this not being eligible for it, I think forced Polestar really to do the content shuffling this time around, give it their A game, and it really seems like on a powertrain and charging level with this one they have. I mentioned bigger battery, longer range, 320 miles. It charges at 205 kilowatts. As a nerd, yes to that, because it's a weird proposition. You spend more for the one that's dual motor, and you get a slightly smaller battery that charges slower. Is it a massive difference in charge speed? No. The peak charging rate's like, 205 versus 155. I don't know what the curve is. We haven't done charging tests, but I'm guessing this one's just going to charge up a little bit quicker. It's a little bit more road trippable combined with a longer range that way. And if you want to save money and be efficient, 19-inch wheels are the way to go. That's what's standard on this, and you can get all-season tires. So super practical on all points there. So I think this is a compelling one. The tax credit is still tough with Polestar 2. Ever since it lost it with the new IRA regime, it has been rough. But I still think this can make sense because Polestar has done all these things with the powertrain, and they've added some extra base content to make it more competitive. The other thing I'll note is all Polestar 2s have this Google OS, the Android Automotive Operating System, basically. That it's the same as the one in my launch Polestar. They haven't changed it, seemingly, which is okay. And not okay, in the sense that I found the system can be unresponsive and laggier compared to Tesla, and yet it has Google Maps and Assistant built in, really good route planning, and unlike Tesla, it gives the option for CarPlay or Android Auto.
Which I think is key. I mean, I personally love to use Apple CarPlay, but in the cars that I have tested with the Google integration, it's really surprising how familiar you are with the interface and just how easy it is to transition into your car with it. And for me, it takes sort of the new complexities of like EV driving out of the mix when I know that there's an interface that I'm familiar with and I can just operate without thinking much about it.
Yeah, that speaks to this car more broadly, I think, in that it's familiar and comfortable for people who maybe this is your first EV, compared to a Tesla Model 3 being a radical departure and that minimalism approach. Things like having a driver display, I haven't even mentioned yet. That's on every Polestar 2. That's nice.
Yes.
I get maps and my speed and stuff without having to look at the center screen. Now, the polish, the software, I think Tesla and their mobile app is really good. I've used the Polestar 2 mobile app for the phone is key functionality and remote unlocking, locking my car, checking its battery. It's like a gamble if it works half the time. And I know Polestar's working on their software, but I've heard no word really of that getting better specifically with this model year. They are improving and updating over time. This car is over-the-air updatable, just like the Polestar 2 always has been. But where it stands, the hardware platform, the chip, all the computer nerdy things are the same as the very first Polestar 2 that launched, which was really good for its time. But it does feel like with Tesla being so good at software, and with a lot of other automakers doing newer Android automotive systems, like the EX30, I think has a slightly updated one, this might feel old, I feel like, in 3 or 4 years.
Oh, interesting.
That's my take on it anyways. But I agree with you, Carrie. It is simple. It's quick to it grips with. It gets what you need done, and CarPlay is so sweet.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so that's been the day with the Polestar 2. You heard all of my thoughts about it, some of Carrie's thoughts as well. Thank you, Carrie, for driving with me today.
This is great.
Yeah, it sounds like you've been, well, I've been in the car with you, but you're enjoying the single motor too.
I really am. I think it's really well equipped.
Yeah, lots of good content in this car. Powertrain really makes it. You gotta get, I think, light colored seats if you live in a hot climate. Really consider the Pilot Pack 2. We've just been using the adaptive cruise in Denver traffic, and it comes in handy.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. Agree. And Carrie, people can find you on Edmunds, right?
Yes, Edmunds. Check us out in car news and our car reviews.
Absolutely. If you haven't heard of them, well, you should have. But Carrie's work is great as well. And
My thanks again to Carrie for filming with me, and the Polestar crew for just hosting a great event in Denver. Super convenient for us to cover. But there's always things that, are there to tell the story and add more context after the event that come up. And so I want to throw that in here before I close off this video with you. So Polestar is one of those brands where you buy direct to consumer. I just want to point that out because I didn't mention it earlier in the video. And that buying experience is something I personally like a lot. It means there's transparency, there's no haggling on what the price is. It is fairly just set and clear, transparent. Lucid, Rivian, Tesla all do it that way. And you can see here on price, just to wrap up, that single motor one isn't as cheap as I would frankly like it to be, especially not being tax credit eligible. Kind of like the Onix 6 is in a tough position competing against the Model 3. Of course, the Polestar 2 is much more car than the Onix 6, but the Onix 6 is also very efficient. It charges very well, and while not being as nice, offers more standard equipment, like having adaptive cruise control base. If you get this single motor, I have to say, you do road trips, you might want to add the Pilot Pack. Plus Pack, if you can avoid it, do, as well as adding ventilated leather seats, because those are going to bump this single motor rear wheel drive Polestar up into almost $60,000. And at that point, you can just spend a little more and get a very nice dual motor. Now, the unfortunate reality here, to reiterate, is that a dual motor doesn't get that new cell chemistry with the battery, and therefore has the same slower 150 kilowatt charge speed as opposed to 205 kilowatts on the newer one. So worse in some ways, but also just better as a value once you start to add in everything, given now especially that when you throw in Performance Pack with forged alloy wheels and Brembo brakes and all that, it also gives you the Plus Pack. So that means that you're spending $63,000 to have all those packages. You add the leather seats for another $4,000, and you have a very nice car that's still cheaper than a BMW i4 M50, which is only marginally quicker in 0 to 60. But if the badge matters to you, then yes, it's a BMW. But unlike a Tesla or the Polestar, you're going to have to deal with dealers to buy that, similar with Hyundai. However, I will say Ioniq 6 in particular has been going for under MSRP because they seem to have a hard time shifting inventory right now. A note on Model 3 and Project Highland. Yes, we know details about Project Highland. We don't know pricing in the US and availability, so I don't want to comment on that. But I will say, if you think of your car as an appliance, Model 3 is so hard to argue with. I'm not a Tesla fanboy. We just try on this channel to kind of look at the market honestly. And right now, miles per dollar, practicality, charging network all considered, the Model 3 is so hard to beat. Yes, the Polestar 2 will be able to use superchargers, as will an existing used one if you chose to go that route, by the way, like I did. Those are getting cheaper all the time if cost is a concern for you. But for value, you want a new car, Polestar 2 is there. If you don't want a Tesla for whatever reason, it's differentiated. It does have a really distinct design. I like the Android operating system, even if it's buggy sometimes, and having CarPlay is so nice, in addition to all those little other things like the flexibility of the Performance Pack, which really makes it, in my opinion, a much more special and unique car than Model 3. But appliance-wise, Model 3 kills this, and that's just because of the tax credit and the pricing they chose, that Polestar chose on this single motor with the larger battery. It's nice that it has lots of range. 320 miles, I should specify, is a lot more than the base rear-wheel drive Model 3, but in many other ways, it doesn't stack up because you're still looking at spending like $9,000 more than the Model 3 before you even consider the tax credit. And with Model 3 Highland, okay, maybe it'll get a little more expensive, but it's also going to have the ventilated seats and other options, and in some ways will be a much nicer car than it has been. But if you like the Polestar design, no denying that. I'm a fan and I respect that as well. So hopefully that's given you some perspective on the market and more context before I close off with this. Again, I've been Max with Out of Spec Reviews. If you have Polestar 2 specific questions, please do leave them in the comments. And yeah, much more to come with all kinds of EV nerdy stuff and testing on this channel. If you want to see more of me, I'm on Out of Spec Guide, where we talk about EV stuff for the basics and tutorials for those of you newer to EVs. Thanks for watching, and someone, Kyle, I, or who knows, someone else, will see you in the next video. Bye.